With there being so many impactful rookies this year, I've got my eyes on a few more that will probably get the call before season's end that you need on your fantasy baseball team on today's action-packed episode of Locked On Fantasy Baseball.
You are Locked On Fantasy Baseball, your daily fantasy baseball podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, fantasy baseball fanatics, and welcome to the Locked On Fantasy Baseball podcast, brought to you by the Locked On Sports Podcast Network, the #1 sports podcast network. And I am your host, Dominick Martino. On today's episode, we are talking about some potentially impactful rookies that I think will get the call before the end of the season. And I've got a few mustache injured players on the end of today's episode, so you need to stay locked on for the whole thing to get all of the information. And today's episode is brought to you by Kalshi. For a limited time, download the Kalshi app and use the code LOCKEDON to get $10 when you trade $10. And at the top of today's episode, I'm going with somebody that I don't think he's the #1 most impactful rookie, but somebody that I think is most likely going to get the call. It's Walker Jenkins, outfielder of the Minnesota Twins, and this guy's already up to 7% owned on Yahoo, so people are stashing him. I think the call up is almost imminent. Jenkins has moved to the number 15 prospect in all of MLB according to MLB.com. He's 6'3", 210, 21 years old. And you guys, if you're an everydayer, you know I've been talking about Jenkins a lot this season. And I kind of have been saying, oh, well, he still needs to grow into the power and find the power stroke. He's been hitting a little bit more homers of late. He had a 2-homer game on August 6th. He homered again on August 13th, so it looks like he's starting to tap into that power a little bit more. But he's a big dude. I think he's going to be someone who has like 30 homer upside. Maybe not right now, but 60, like I said, 60 great power. Was a first round pick, number 5 overall back in 2023. He's been tearing up the minors. Jenkins has 307 batting average across 3 levels this year through 66 games. 47 runs, 18 doubles, 3 triples, 9 homers, 23 RBIs. He also has 37 walks to 45 strikeouts. You love that, and 13 steals. So for a big guy, he's got a little bit of speed on him as well. He's somebody that I think is going to translate very well to the bigs. You even look at just his, AAA stats this year, hitting 289 in AAA over 62 games with 7 homers, 20 RBIs, 42 runs, 13 steals, 36 walks to 43 strikeouts. So he's been dominant for a young player at AAA. And he went from high A to AAA. Skipped single A. No, he didn't skip single A. He played 1 game at single A. Sorry. So just skipped double A there and went straight to AAA and, has been killing it there. So Walker Jenkins with that outfield eligibility prospect I'm really high on. I think we see him get the call before the end of the season. And just somebody who's a must-add, in my opinion. Only 7% owned. You play in dynasty formats, probably already stashed there. But, deep keeper leagues where you have maybe an NA spot and you're just looking to stash somebody who could be impactful down the stretch, I think Walker Jenkins is somebody for me. I personally have him in my top 10 prospects, not rest of season, but just I keep an active top prospects list. And I have Walker Jenkins inside my top 10 prospects that have not debuted yet in the MLB. So I think there's high upside here, batting average, power, a little bit of speed, runs and RBI could be good in this Twins lineup depending on where he hits upon making debut. So Walker Jenkins, somebody, once again, I'm really high on. Definitely stash him in all formats where applicable. Let's move on to, I think, who's the #1 mustache prospect. But you guys are probably tired of hearing me talk about him in these mustache episodes. But hey, if you're a new listener, you may not have heard me talk about him. It's Kade Anderson, starting pitcher of the Seattle Mariners. He's up to 23% owned on Yahoo. He's the best pitcher in the minor leagues. I don't think that's debatable at this point. Had another dominant start his last time out. And we can even just do his whole numbers on the season. AA all season for Kade Anderson in his first season in the minors. At 22 years old, he's a lefty. He's 6'2", 180 pounds. 18 starts this year, 10 wins, 1 loss, a 106 ERA. Through 93 innings, 135 strikeouts. He has a whip of 0.64. Batters are hitting 147 against him. He might be a top 40-ish pitcher in the bigs right now if he debuted. First round pick back in 2025, number 3 overall. Kade Anderson, man, this guy's the real deal. If he's available in your league, I'd stash him now. Oh, I did want to talk about his last start, right? I did mention that his last 2 starts have honestly been great. This one's okay. Hold on. Here we go. We got it. Last start was on August 14th. He threw 5.2 innings, gave up 2 hits, no earned runs, 1 walk, struck out 7. In his start before that, he went 5.1 innings, gave up 3 hits, no earned runs, no walks, 9 strikeouts. This kid's ready. Seattle, we talked about the team he plays for, Brian Wu. We talked about a little bit of shoulder issues in his last start. Maybe that says something right there. They traded Luis Castillo at the deadline. Kade Anderson's just dominant. I don't see the reason to keep him down there other than, you have 5 good starting pitchers already, which Seattle does, as long as Wu is healthy. So we'll see, but I think it's imminent. Even if they call up Kade Anderson and they say, hey, we're doing the piggyback thing again, where it was annoying. But, I mean, a kid like this that has this kind of talent and will retain rookie eligibility for next year if he's called up at this point, why not? Because then he gets the cup of coffee, he gets the experience now in the minors, now in the majors, and then next year you could still have him on your team, rookie eligibility, and get those draft pick compensation if Kade Anderson wins Rookie of the Year in 27, which I think there's a high chance he does. So, I think it's about time. I think we see Kade Anderson, especially Seattle, making a playoff push here. There's not a lot of reasons to keep this kid down there anymore. What's left for Kade Anderson to prove? Absolutely nothing, if you ask me. So, Kade Anderson, my favorite mustache player right now. Bear with me, folks. Sorry about my dog, Kobe. Yeah, so the only thing I could think of with Kade Anderson is, once again, if they do that piggyback thing that Seattle was doing before the trade of Luis Castillo, maybe it's like more 6 innings of the main guy and 4 innings of Kade. We'll see how it goes. I'm sure there'll be situations for Kade Anderson to throw 5 innings at a time. I don't know if it's going to be a situation where Kade Anderson throws 6-7 inning starts. I don't foresee that or predict that, but I predict some really strong. And I hate to say it like this because those numbers weren't fantastic, but they were good. Think about what Chase Burns did at the end of last year. When he got called up. He got called up, had some really big strikeout games, had some games where he gave up a lot of runs, but it was really just one blow-up start. So you look at what I keep saying Kade Anderson. You look at what Chase Burns did last year in 8 starts to his 13 appearances. I don't know if Kade Anderson gets that much play if he gets the call right now, but it was a 4.57 ERA, 43 innings, 67 strikeouts, a 1.31 WHIP. But the underlying stats look really good. Kade Anderson might be better than Chase Burns long term. I'm not sure if the Chase Burns is having a monster first full season. Kade Anderson does have potentially higher upside than that. So we'll see where it goes with Kade Anderson. I love the kid. High talent, 23% owned on Yahoo. Best pitcher in the minors right now. Best player to stash. That's not has not debuted in the majors yet, in my opinion, for fantasy baseball. So do what you will with that information. Franklin Arias might be a can't miss name as well that you need to stash. I have more information on that. And all right, folks, before we get into, that rest of that prospect call up talk, I need to talk to you about, my friends over at Amazon, who we give a big thank you to for this limited break. This back to school season, spend less on your kids with Amazon. We all know how crazy back to school shopping can be. And, it starts with a few items, then suddenly you're shopping for supplies, clothes, lunch gear, tech, and about 10 other things that you didn't see coming, and it adds up fast. When you look at that school supply list, it's just like you wonder if you're shopping for one kid or opening a small office supply store. Nobody realized that first grade required this much inventory. And shopping like this can get really out of control if you're not careful. We didn't even start talking about the first day outfit yet, right? Your kid spends days planning the perfect outfit because they want to make that first day great impression, and then you end up putting almost as much thought into it as they do. And at least the first day of photos are going to be worth it, right? So remember, with Amazon's low back to school prices, just spend less on your kids because every dollar you don't spend on them is a dollar you save. Shop back to school at Amazon and spend less on your kids. And just want to say hi. I want to say a personal shout out to our everydayers and new listeners making Locked On Fantasy Baseball your first listen of the day. And, we truly appreciate you guys. So just keep doing what you're doing. Follow, subscribe. It's all truly appreciated. We have a lot of great season coming, rest of season, a lot of stuff coming off season. So you just want to make sure you stay locked in. And we want to get you those fantasy baseball championships as well. So once again, we're doing our best to get you all of that information as it comes along. But next up, I'm talking about Franklin Arias, arguably the biggest mover in the last shakeup of, the MLB's top prospect list, according to MLB.com. Franklin Arias goes to 3. He is the number 3 prospect in all of MLB now, with the Red Sox. He's a stud. He is fantastic. Across 2 levels this season, batting .314 in the minors. Of course, once again, 2 levels. 93 games, .314 batting average, 62 runs, 21 doubles, a triple, 23 homers, 71 RBIs, 45 walks to 64 strikeouts, and 5 steals. A lot of power has developed here with Arias this year. The speed, it hasn't really shown it, but it's plus speed there too. He has 35 steal season 2 years ago, stole 12 bags last year in 116 games, so could potentially be a double-digit kind of steal guy as well. He's just developed really well. You look back at some prospect grades, a few years, 3, 4, 5 years ago, he didn't profile as this kind of guy. I think he truly gets the call down the stretch. I think Arias and Walker Jenkins are, between the two of them are the best hitting prospects to stash. As to who gets the call first, I think it's any day now for a lot of these prospects. We talk. It's a shame that I don't get to really talk about the excitement of Joshua Baez and when he did in his, we'll talk about it for a second here. Why not? What Baez did in his 3 home runs in his debut, making MLB history, was amazing. Not that I think Arias or Jenkins, can do it, or even Kade Anderson can make history in their debut, but I think they could be very impactful down the stretch here, for fantasy baseball purposes. So with, Franklin Arias and Walker Jenkins and Kade Anderson, my 3 favorite. I think they all get the call here down the stretch. I think we should own all of them. I don't think there's a lot of formats where you can literally just go pick up 3 of them right now, but think about what you need. If you need a little bit more power, honestly, probably do Arias right now. A little bit more maybe counting stats and reliability, I'll go Walker Jenkins. And then obviously, if you need a stud pitcher, Kade Anderson's the way to go. But I digress. I want to try and get all these names in today, so we're going to keep going with the prospects. And we go over to Colorado, who's just had a thing for calling up prospects this year. I mean, they have to see what they have, right? If they're going to have any chance of rebuilding. Charlie Condon, a name we've talked about a lot on this podcast, has been really good in the minors this year. In AAA, 271 batting average, through 102 games, 391 at-bats, 85 runs, 18 doubles, 7 triples, 22 bomb skis, 74 RBIs, 61 walks to 121 strikeouts and 7 steals. The kid's been dominant in the minors this year. And Condon's a big dude, too. He's 6'5", 216 pounds. He's only 23 years old. Condon's somebody that arguably, my opinion, is going to be a staple in top 5 rounds of fantasy baseball next few years. The kid really just profiles well as a power hitter in Coors Field when he gets the call from the Rockies, and there could be a little bit of batting average in play. Could be 270-ish hitter with 35 home run kind of power. Counting stats could be good. I think this Rockies team has some really good young talent. I hope they can develop it. That's the problem. I think that's where the Rockies are missing, man. Because there's been a lot of good players that have come through their system that it hasn't worked out for. I hope it works out for Condon because I just love the way he profiles, and I think it very well can. But you look at guys like Zach Veen, you look at TJ Rumfield, who's having a great year over there. Jake McCarthy, a little bit older, but a player who actually has done some good over there in Coors. Cole Carrick has had some ups and downs this year. I wish things were going better for Ezekiel Tovar. Connor Norby has been playing okay over there too. So they have a really good team. Let's see if Condon gets the call to go over there and just, do his thing with these guys. And I love Mickey Moniak. If you're in every day, you know how much I love Mickey Moniak. So Charlie Condon, like him a lot. Definitely a stash guy. Power for sure. Big power could potentially come out of this bat. So with Condon, did I give you his Yahoo ownership percentage? Bear with me on that one. Condon 8%, so even a little bit more than who we talked about earlier, Walker Jenkins. So actually, I want to talk about somebody. This next guy actually did get the call already. Actually, before we get into anybody else on today's episode, we're actually Joe Musgrove. Joe Musgrove is doing some big things. Fastball velo is up, and I'm fired up to talk about him. But I need to talk to you about, some of my friends. Need to talk to you specifically about my friends over at Kalshi, right? Baseball season is in full swing, and you can trade every game on Kalshi. And on Kalshi, you're trading those games. You can trade every single game, every single week. And there's so many opportunities with everything going on at the end of the season. And, on Kalshi, you're trading against your peers in a live market, meaning there's no house. And as the probability changes, you can buy in and out of your position. For a limited time, download the Kalshi app and use the code LOCKEDON to get $10 when you trade 10. That's KALSHI, Kalshi, trade on anything. 18 plus only, restrictions and eligibility requirements apply. Event contact trading involves risk and may not be suitable for all investors. Prices, values, and available markets may differ from those mentioned. For more information, see kalshi.com/regulatory. And all right, let's get things, moving and grooving and back into it. I mentioned Joe Musgrove. So, we're going into injured players here. With Musgrove, a lot of great news coming from the minors with Joe. Well, yeah, his minor league rehab assignment, a lot of good things coming. Velocity's up. He was up to 95 on his fastball. And if you know anything about Joe Musgrove, not really a huge fastball guy, but up, a tremendous amount on average with that fastball too. If those gains could stay even for a few starts, maybe it's 5, 6, 7 starts down here the rest of the season, something like that. Maybe it's closer to 5 or 6 starts down the rest of the season here for Musgrove. It could be good. Great stash right now. I think probably the best injured player to stash for fantasy baseball purposes. That's widely available. Got 70 pitches in his last outing. Maybe it's one more in the minors, and he did get knocked around a little bit. I think for Musgrove, it's more about getting that velocity back up, feeling good, which he did. And he was good in his first two, his first two minor league rehab assignment starts. Musgrove looked really good in those, and the results were really good. He has some personal quotes from this saying the best he's felt in 2 years. He hasn't pitched in a game in the big since, the playoffs back in 2024. I think it was the wild card series against the Braves. Tommy John is what he's coming back from. So, sometimes, pitchers come back better from it, for a bit, and they have a little bit of a grace period where they don't get injured again. So I love that for Musgrove. He'll even be somebody I'm probably sneakily trying to target next year, even though if he does well down the stretch, probably won't be able to get too cheap of a price on him. But the arrows are pointing really, really up on Joe Musgrove for the Padres and, himself, fantasy baseball purposes, 23% owned on Yahoo. Great stash. Great stash right now is Joe Musgrove. Next up, gotta go with one of my boys. It's Giancarlo Stanton of the New York Yankees, and he's making motion, he's making strides towards getting back. There's no rehab assignment date yet, TBD. He did some base running over the weekend. It's coming. I want to say it's coming. I think the Yankees want to try and keep him healthy, going into the playoffs and that home stretch here, but they also need to get him warmed up for that as well. So I think he makes his debut, not debut, but return within the next 2 weeks here, I want to say. Stanton is 20% owned on Yahoo. Through his 24 games played this year, Stanton had 3 homers, 14 RBIs, 8 runs, a steal, batting .256. He looked good. You know what Stanton does? He drives in runs, hits homers, and hopefully does not kill you in the batting average department. I believe Stanton can keep a 240 plus batting average, and there's a world where he hits even better than that. So a great stash here for if you need power. If you have the open IL spots, and I feel like IL spots have been opening up here down the stretch. There's been a lot of guys coming off the IL of late. So, some of us have the room to stash guys. I think Stanton's a good, move on a good team where he can drive and runs. The Yankees haven't been great, but good enough. We'll see how it goes, but he's somebody that's reliable. You know what you're getting. It's not really a mystery bag. When Stanton's healthy, he's usually a pretty solid player. So he's just somebody that you can kind of just rely on a bit in a weird way. But I digress. I move on to, this next player, Daniel Palencia of the Cubs. He's an interesting one. The Cubs are saying that they're looking to activate him in the coming days. They haven't committed to an exact date for now. I could see Palencia getting mixed in the, closer, situation there with the Cubs because they haven't really had anybody who's been locking it down. But Palencia has also been mediocre on his rehab assignment. Has had a couple blow-ups. But we'll see. We'll see where it goes. I think it's a good stash if you missed out on Justin Martinez, who just returned, who also is still a great pickup if he's out there in your league and you're looking for a closer. Justin Martinez of the Diamondbacks. I love him. Flamethrower. Palencia, probably a little bit lower on my list than the guy Justin Martinez. I would check for Justin Martinez's availability in your leagues too. But if you need somebody specifically, it's a mustache episode, so I want to talk about somebody you could stash on your IL. Palencia was really good last year in the closer's role with the Cubs, got a bunch of saves, had good strikeout numbers, good ratios. I think he could be similar if he figures it out. Just think he's just really shaking the rust off in the minors at the moment. So, I'd stash him if I could, if you had the spot. I think it's a nice little move. I move on to somebody else who, if this guy makes it back before the end of the season, and some of you may have seen put the name up on YouTube already, it's Corbin Burnes. Of the Arizona Diamondbacks. If he makes it back and gives you 3 good starts down the stretch, it's worth it. He threw a 30-pitch bullpen session in Arizona on Tuesday. As I'm recording this, it looks like he could be back. They're saying early September. I mean, if he goes out, I think it's tough to believe it. Early September, where he's making starts for the Diamondbacks, he'd really have to push that timeline. He'd have to get out there and be throwing a rehab assignment by like next week. And that all has to go well. And, for timing him to line up for the September playoff push, playoff time for fantasy baseball. We'll see, though. I mean, it's worth the stash. If you have the open spot, he's making his way back. And then it's even, look, I look at it like this. If you play in a keeper league, it's keep away. Play keep away with a guy like Corbin Burnes, who might be really valuable in 27. So if you have him stashed on your IL, you activate him before the end of the season. And, it's a nice little keep away game from your competitors as well. So I think irregardless whether Corbin Burnes makes it in a keeper league or dynasty format, I think it's a good move just to have Burnes stashed, just to keep him away from anybody else in your league. Other than that, redraft, it's going to be really tough for Burnes to make his debut and give us anything impactful for fantasy baseball championship time. But I still think if you have the IL spot, there's not a lot of players out there right now that are going to be impactful that you can grab widely available. Corbin Burnes is 17% owned on Yahoo. And a guy like Schwellenbach, who, also could have been impactful. He's not going to make it back before the end of the season. So we've lost some guys we thought were coming back. I think Burnes still has the chance to do it. We'll see. My last guy on today's episode is Josh Young of the Texas Rangers. I think he has a chance to make it back before the end of the season as well. Rangers third baseman, actually having a sneaky solid year this year, hit 294 over 92 games with an 802 OPS, 46 runs, 9 homers, 35 RBIs, and he even chipped in a steal. He's 22% owned on Yahoo. Josh Young is. Young calf issue. He began running and fielding on Sunday. Could be clear to do a defensive progression within the next few days. I think he'll make it back before the end of the season and, just hopefully continue where he left off. I would love to have seen a little bit more power out of Josh Young this year, but still has dealt with injury concerns. Hit cleanup and third a lot in this Rangers lineup this year. And forgive me for my dog. He's getting a little antsy as I wrap up here. But, Josh Young could be a really good impactful player for the end of the season as far as bats go. Will give you batting average, hopefully a little bit of power. Maybe runs in RBIs, this Rangers lineup, but we'll see. We'll see. But, folks, I digress. That is going to be all for today. Shout out to our everydayers and new listeners for making Locked On Fantasy Baseball your first listen each and every day. Make sure you subscribe and follow Locked On Fantasy Baseball so you get all of our latest episodes. We're available on all social media platforms and wherever you can watch and or listen to podcasts. So, for those of you on the video side of things, we send you over to the first ever 24/7 National Locked On Podcast Network YouTube channel. And on the audio side of things, make sure your second listen is Locked On MLB. But, guys, I digress. Until next time, see ya.